Okay, so take three. Take three. Oh my goodness. Okay. Okay. So Stephanos is trying to find me. Okay. There we go. Okay, guys. So Stephanos is in the house. This is this is so funny. So Stephanos, you're gonna have to wait just a minute because I have given you two amazing introductions and I lost both of them. So you're gonna be patient with me for a quick second. So guys. Kalispera, hello to everyone. I'm gonna just do this. This is fun. You know, this is what happens when we have lives, right? Live events. You know, things happen, issues happen, clients call, and it's an emergency. So, Stephanos, first of all, thank you so much. But I'm gonna bring you up. Anyway, so Wednesdays are very important to me, and one of the reasons why Wednesdays are so important are because. Always for you, I can only be patient. One of the reasons why I love Wednesdays is because Wednesdays we bring up really incredible people, and it could be from anywhere in the world, in any occupation, because I really believe that all of us have an important story and a journey to share. And like I mentioned before, how important it is for us to listen, to be active listeners. And someone's story can trigger our need for help. It can also help us see things in a different light. It can be incredibly useful to be able to identify with people that are going through things or that have gone through things, and just kind of knowing that we're not alone in the world. And this way we can reach out to different people. And it's very, very comforting. It can also be extremely inspiring, just like today is. So, May, like I said before, is, thank you. May is such an incredible month. It's an incredible month for me. I love May because, well, May is my birth month. And as I mentioned before, my daughter taught me about the birth month. And I thought, you know, I'm Greek, so what better way to celebrate myself for a whole month instead of just one day? But May also is my name day. Like I said, it's Mother's Day, which since I became a mom has become incredibly special for me. And one beautiful way to, so one beautiful way to celebrate May is with our incredible guest that we have today, who has so much to offer so many people. So on that note, because we are very time sensitive, I am bringing him on right now, because I don't know. So waiting for this. Hi,
Hello.
how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm excellent. I'm excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. My apologies for being late.
That's okay. I think your accent, we just want to hear your accent, and that's just soothing enough. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
This accent isn't soothing in Australia. For some reason here in America, it does okay. But in other places, I don't know.
Well, that's the same thing they say about me. So I think, you know, we don't appreciate what we hear in our own area. So
That's true.
So Stefanos, so I'm so glad, even if, you know, we had a little bit of an issue like with clients, but like I said, that always happens. And one of our responsibilities is to be close to our own clients. One of the things that I love, and this is what I said earlier, was the way you identify with the alchemist. And I mentioned it before, how much I love listening to people's stories, and I like kind of getting people's backstory to find out who I'm talking to. And your journey is incredible. I love what I mentioned before, again, was people need to follow you on Instagram and look at your website, which is your mission statement really resonated with me. I love the way you said you're the voice of people who feel that they're voiceless. And how many people do feel that they don't have a voice, they don't feel heard, and they don't feel seen. And the alchemist, along with everything else that you do, it just embodies what you talked about, helping people relate to each other authentically through love. And I thought how beautiful that is. And the term a steward of the earth was something that I don't think I've ever heard before. And it just seems so organic, but so in alignment with your inner self, and how that is so important to be able to actually be the best version of ourselves. So on that note, I really want to thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me here.
So looking into what you do and how you focus so much on trauma and wounds, I want to ask you how important that is for people who are dealing with wounds, and as opposed to sometimes our wounds and traumas sort of take us to the next level because they inspire us to become something else or to try and achieve success. Sometimes this doesn't work that way, and it actually doesn't fuel our desire, but it actually creates tremendous limiting beliefs, chains and fears that paralyze us, and we can't move forward. How important is that for you when you work with people?
How important is it to identify our past traumas? Is that the question?
Yes.
On many levels, very important. It's not important to relive those past traumas because that can be deeply painful and dangerous for the psyche and the integrity of the psyche and the construct of self. But to be of an understanding and in connection to one's past in a whole way, irrespective of what's considered ups and downs, highs and lows, but to get a very holistic picture, a whole view of one's past, including traumas that people have experienced and very difficult times and how they've dealt with that. It's very helpful as a coach or as a journey guide to really assist that individual in meeting them firstly where they're at, but then meeting them with loving presence, empathetic resonance, a sense of safety, non-judgment, because safety really is the healing. And often trauma doesn't feel safe. Trauma that resides in the body and the mind complex doesn't feel safe. And it's constantly looking for a way to feel safe. But in doing so, it can sometimes do that in distorted ways. And that's where you'll see coping strategies, maladaptive coping strategies, unhealthy, unsustainable coping strategies, such as drugs or alcoholism or workaholism, or sex compulsion, love compulsion, food addiction, binging on television as an example, numbing oneself. Right? We try to compensate for feeling very terrible. We're wanting to put pleasure back in our bodies. And so as a coach and practitioner, if you can understand that and be connected to that, and help that person feel safe, they find their nervous system realizes, oh, there's another way to be here. There's another way. I don't need to go only to these coping strategies that are very intense, because it's the intensity looking for the intensity, right? Because there's an energetic, there's a vibrational match to that. And so we want to get them out of the intensity and out of the extremity and into more subtle ways of being and relating and understanding self in the world. So knowing one's past is critical to moving beyond that past into a newly developed future.
Okay. Looking at your own journey, which I found in one of your videos extremely important. And I find a lot of us, many of us go through identifying our past wounds. But how do we get to the point of forgiveness? And you brought up something very special about your own journey with your father. And though you found the healing process, even though finding the healing process, how difficult it is to get into the stage of forgiveness and not needing that validation from our parents, that constant validation, that, you know, our success story, and no matter how much we do, we still, in their eyes, we feel that we're not worthy, that we're not enough, and we seek it desperately. How do you get over that part?
You know, to be completely transparent, I would say there's still a part of me that when I have a success in the world that I think would resonate with my father, and my father and I have a healthy relationship, I would still say there's a part of me that is like, I wish Baba could see this. I wish my dad could see this. For those of you that don't know what Baba means, it just means father in Greek. I wish Baba could see this. I wish he could experience this, but in the way that I wanted to experience it, and be proud of me in that way. Now, that's a very small part. Previously in my life, that drove me a great deal, more unconsciously than consciously. Now, so it's a very, very small part. My relationship to that has changed. it's shifted dramatically, and it will continue to shift. Will it ever go away? Potentially not. And I'm okay with that because my relationship to it's changed. And so as children, we deify our parents. We're very helpless. We're very, I want to say, dependent, weak almost as infants and children. We are susceptible to danger, and we look to our parents both consciously and unconsciously through our nervous systems and through our physiology and through our emotional and mental being and the spiritual connection we have with our primary caregivers as saviors, as people that look after us. And there's an unconscious projection of deification. And so our parents are human, like we're human, and they are going to fall from grace. And how we as parents, we as adults, help our children navigate that really determines their level of attachment to self, their level of self-worth, the way they then navigate complexity and difficulty. You know, attachment theory is part of that, but nurturing our children through very crucial developmental stages in a healthy way is absolutely crucial. I'll give you an example, right? So there's a particular age around 5 or 6 where both boys and girls, and this is partly in tune with the Oedipus complex, but where boys and girls will often project like a flirtation or sexual innuendo towards the opposite sex. So little girl towards father, little boys towards mother. And this isn't like an adult type of flirtation. This is that child learning their way, learning their personality, their sexuality, their sense of self in the world, right? And they may say, oh, daddy, I want to marry you. I can't wait to marry you and have children with you. Now, that's a very quote unquote normal thing for a little child to say. Little boy to say to mum, little girl to say to dad often. How that parent responds is very, very important. And so, for example, that dad could respond, oh, don't say that. That's just our little secret. Don't tell mum. And it doesn't mean anything by it. Will never sexually abuse his daughter in any capacity or anything like that, but handles it in that way. That isn't a healthy way to handle it. A more appropriate way to handle it, as an example, would be, darling, daddy will always love you. I appreciate you so much, but daddy is married to mummy, and one day you're going to get married or you're going to have children of your own with a man that you really care for, but I'll always be your father. Like that type of connection, right? And so how we deal with our children, it impacts us. So how my parents dealt with me and were with me in all the different ways, and I experienced a lot of violence and volatility and uncertainty and fear in my childhood, but how my parents deal with me, it impacts how I behave as an adult, how I think about myself, how I learn to give and receive love, how I show up to the world, how I am in relationship, the types of relationships I'm attracting. And until I get to the core of that, I'm going to continue to attract relationships and people that are familiar, yet also I yearn to heal. So I'm going to attract dynamics that are replicating the extremity or the intensity of my childhood in order for me to heal that, to be different with it, to recalibrate my nervous system and my internal self. I think, does that answer your question?
Yes, exactly. Yes, it does. It does. And how important that is for us to be able to nurture our inner child, right?
Yeah.
That is
big time.
So after, like, you know, unpacking all of that, when you do meet someone and, you know, you're in a relationship, how do you avoid having, you know, like people that are either very obsessively attached or the opposite, avoidant? What happens when those two people connect, and what kind of obstacles are created in a relationship?
So what I hear what you're asking, correct me if I'm wrong, is that how do you avoid making the same choices over and over again? Like, in other words, making decisions about what partnership to be in when you know it's unhealthy. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, the immediate answer is stop. Just stop doing that. Don't make those choices. Whatever you were doing before, do the opposite. But the more elaborate response and deep dive is you've got to do your own work, and you've got to heal those past wounds in your own self. And you touched on it. It's reparentification. So you're reparenting yourself. That's
right.
Really important. And you learn to do that in relationship, of course, and through other people. But you have to ultimately do that for yourself, so you're not projecting on others these things that you think you need from others, and when they can't or don't give them to you, you lose your mind. You either get aggressive, or you become withdrawn, or you think you're worthless, or you become hyper attached and clingy and needy, or whatever it may be. So we've got to be responsible for doing our own inner work. Now, the beautiful thing about intimate relationships are a fertile ground for growth, and will often attract what we need to heal. The thing is, we don't want to avoid those pains, because if we avoid them, we're just bringing them into the next relationship, and we're having the same experience but with a different name, different face, different haircut. So we want to be able to be in that relationship and own our stuff. Now, that relationship may not work out, and it may not be for us, but we have to be present to what's arising and not ignore it, or invalidate it, or numb it. Because when we do that, again, we're just going to get more of this in later relationships.
Exactly. So I'm going to piggyback on that and ask you, how do you have those conversations? How do you have those difficult conversations, those, where you have to confront issues? And, we're sort of programmed into, not confronting, not saying, kind of like, just packing it all in, and not, people take things that we say, or a partner, that it's criticism, and not, they don't take it, like receiving it and saying it. So someone could be very compassionate and empathetic giving the information, but that doesn't mean that the receiver is going to take it that way. So how does a couple actually can have those difficult conversations?
Yeah. So three core things that come to me when you say that. Have pre-established agreements. You have to have pre-established agreements of how you want to communicate and how you want to, quote unquote, argue or disagree. And you want to honor those agreements. The second thing is, you need to be non-attached. You have to deal with that part of you inside that is so attached to wanting to control the situation, wanting them to see you a particular way. And the third thing that you can do, and this is in no particular order, is practice. Write letters to your partner or to this person before you even have the conversation with them. Stand in front of a mirror and speak what you would like to say to them in the way that you would like to say. Work with a coach or a therapist and practice the things that you would like to say. Get their feedback. Am I being abrasive? Am I being passive aggressive? Am I compassionate enough? Am I coming into deep pain here? What am I saying? Practice those three things and you'll get pretty far.
Okay. Do you find that now, during like everything that's been going on, people are getting better at communicating, or are they becoming more introverted?
Everything that's going on? What do you mean by that? just to poke the bear a bit. Just to poke the bear. What do you mean by that?
Just a little pandemic.
Little pandemic. I'm not sure if it's a pandemic, but okay. Let's. I'll hold my perspectives on that. Okay. Yes, there is chaos in the world at the moment at some level. That is for sure. There's a great deal of uncertainty at the moment. For some people are really stepping into their power and saying, wow, I need to take advantage of this because I'm seeing some big holes in my life, my relationships, the way I'm showing up, who I'm being at the moment. And other people are numbing even more, going deeper into alcoholism, going into drugs at a deeper level, numbing more, pornography, isolating. Some people are forced in that position. Some people don't have the tools and techniques and skills and support to be able to pull themselves out. Some people are going through a lot of stuff. I mean, whatever's happening in the world, it is causing real life issues. People are losing their jobs, their families, their lives, their livelihoods. They're losing their sense of self and confidence. They're living in greater fear. This is real shit that's going on. Yeah. And so some people are being called to, I want to move through this, and some people are going deeper into fear. So to answer your question, it really depends who you speak to.
Right. Okay, so you mentioned something about fear. I love how you talk about facing your fear and how important that is to have something every day to face. And can you talk about that just a little bit? And one of the things that you mentioned within fear, and that I think is something so huge, is vulnerability, which is probably one of the biggest fears that we have.
There's something called exposure therapy, and we can titrate that and pendulate that, and that essentially means we can expose ourselves in a very slow way, titration, or we can expose ourselves in a very rapid way, flooding, to new ways of being or behavioral change or habit creation, new habit creation, and so forth. When it comes to fear, uncertainty is a part of life. And so becoming conditioned to uncertainty, or to dealing with different levels of uncertainty and increasing our window of tolerance, our ability to withstand difficulty and pain, challenge, adversity, the unknown, etc., can be very useful. So one of the ways that we can do that is expose ourselves to things that scare us on a daily basis, or at least on a regular basis. It doesn't have to be jumping out of an airplane. It doesn't have to be, something extreme, downhill skiing off a mountain you have no familiarity with. It can be as simple as, I'm going to look in front of the mirror for 3 minutes this morning, and I'm just going to gaze into my own eyes. And if that's uncomfortable, I'm going to explore why that's uncomfortable. It could be asking someone for a date. It could be applying for a new job. It could be writing that novel, that book that you wanted to write that you haven't written. It could be taking a new way to work. Just do something different that promotes that sense of uncertainty to help condition you to know that you're safe in uncertainty. Now, not all uncertainty is going to feel or be safe. However, uncertainty is a part of life, and the more conditioned, exposed we can become to uncertainty, the more resilient and tough we become. Tough meaning our ability to move through difficulty and challenge, and resilience meaning our ability to recover from difficulty and challenge. This is going to happen in life. It's going to happen in relationships. If we can be more resilient, we can weather the storm, we can be more compassionate, more patient. These are beautiful attributes to have in relationship and in self. We can be more empathetic, understanding. We can also learn how to set healthier boundaries. So the domino effect of dealing with our fears regularly and facing our stuff and moving through it as opposed to avoiding it, it really promotes I would say, a greater sense of self and a more valuable human being on this planet. And I think we need a lot more valuable human beings on this planet, particularly with the times that we're moving through.
Definitely. How do you allow for vulnerability yet create healthy boundaries?
I'm going to go back to that non-attached piece, and we become non-attached by being confident. We can become confident by doing things that engaging in challenges that we can overcome, that give us a sense of confidence. Begin to surround ourselves with people that support us and love us and care for us, and are champions of our cause or of our values in the world. Being seen and being heard and being loved and being respected, giving and doing things for people can all promote confidence and so forth. And that sense of, I don't need to be attached to this thing or this person saying something or this experience or me going out with this woman to feel good about myself, or me getting this job, or me making this amount of money, because I feel just really comfortable in my own skin. And so that can really help with vulnerability and help us be vulnerable and speak our truth. And again, the setting the healthy boundaries piece goes hand in hand. You've got to practice setting healthy boundaries to actually be proficient, good at setting healthy boundaries, right? So you've got to practice it, and you've got to practice it in small ways, in micro ways. Don't flood yourself, because that's going to be very challenging. It's not going to necessarily happen. Flooding, an example of flooding is, you've never spoken your truth in the 10 years you've been with someone, and then all of a sudden you're going to lay it down and tell them how it is. Like that's probably not going to happen. And all these changes that you want, and there's a laundry list of 38 changes, not going to happen. Flooding is when you have a fear of heights, and instead of starting at 3 feet, you go to 1,000 feet. No, it's not. It can work. In general anxiety disorder, flooding is a technique that can work, and it can be quite effective in certain circumstances. But for most people, it's very traumatic. It's just re-traumatizing self, right? So vulnerability and setting healthy boundaries, the more you trust, love, and respect yourself, the easier it's going to be truthful, aka one expression of vulnerability, and to set healthy boundaries with respect to what your needs are.
Let me ask you, are you the type of person that is always in control? Because looking at you, it's like incredibly, or do you just sort of, surrender to the universe at times? Both. And whatever may be?
Both. And I ensure I'm very cognizant that that's a practice for me. Yes, I like being in mastery and in you can call it control, but in some circumstances, control of my direction, of where I'm going, of a conversation, of an argument, of a situation, particularly if it's dangerous. But there are times where I surrender. I mean, I engage in plant medicine. I go deeper in meditation and breathwork practices. I allow myself to be led by other men and other leaders in certain groups or educational programs that I'm in. And there are some times where I struggle with being led or having someone else in control because I think or perceive I could do it way better, far better than them. And there's the ego gets in, and I have to practice with playing with my ego and being in the ego in a deeper way. And so there's all of that as well that comes with it.
You have a question here. How do you surrender?
How do I personally surrender, or how does one surrender?
Well, the question says, how do you surrender? So
you got to move through your fear. You've got to make the fear of not changing bigger than the fear of changing. And so you just have to step through the surrender. And look, let's be very real. Many people have experienced different types of abuse: sexual, physical, emotional, or all three, or a combination of all three. And to surrender and give control to someone else, or to another person, or a coach, or a friend, or a parent, or anything like that, can be very, very challenging. And so we have to work on healing those wounds. So ultimately, how does one surrender? Healing the wounds of the past that are stopping them from trusting themselves and other people. And you do that in a safe group environment. You do that working with a coach, a therapist, a practitioner, a shaman, a spiritual healer, whatever it may be. But you've got to heal those wounds to be able to surrender.
After you've done all of this work, right, on yourself, and you've reached the level of where you are now, do you ever feel disconnected? And
yes.
If so, how do you get there? How do you get back in alignment?
Yeah, new levels, new devils. That's what one of my guides says. One of my coaches and my confidants and mentors, and she's a dear friend as well. New levels, new devils. Like you're gonna break through something. There's going to be issues that are associated with that. I sometimes move into a shame cycle, and I spiral into shame, and it's very intense for my partner, and it's very intense for me. And how do I get myself out? By being in the presence of loving presence, empathetic resonance, compassion, understanding, non-judgment, both from myself. Sometimes it takes me a minute to get there, and from others that I value, people that I value in the world. So there's some of that there as well.
Oh my God. I know we're time sensitive. I want to ask you, I want you to tell me 3 words that would describe you. Which words would you use?
Fuck, I'm not sure. 3 words that would describe me. Safe, grounded, visionary.
Love it.
Probably a few more.
If you could choose to go anywhere right now, where would it be?
Yeah, I want to go back. This is my home. The US is my home for sure, and I have multiple homes. I want to go back and visit my brother and my niece that I haven't seen, who was born recently, and my other friends that I have. I miss that my home in Western Australia as well, and that's been very difficult for me. So I would go there. Yeah, but amazing. I can't at the moment.
When you're not doing everything, all these wonderful things that you're doing, what do you like to do in your free time?
I like to exercise. I like to be with my wife. We talk, we dream weave, we play games together, we walk. I like watching movies. I like collecting basketball cards. I love being with my friends, paintballing, shooting guns, archery, getting out in nature. I'm very connected to earth. And there are many tactical training that I engage in. There's many different things that I engage in that I love. Yeah.
Amazing.
Let that little kid come out.
So many people, they're like those little hamsters that just keep chasing and chasing and chasing happiness, and are never happy. What would you say to these people?
Part of me thinks, well, it's not really my place to say anything unless someone asks me. And I know you're asking me the question per se, but that's where that's just my disposition, right? Where I go to. I suppose I would ask them a question. I would say, is this where you want to be in life? Like, is this truly, are you living in your gifts? Are you living in your higher self? Are you living your best life? And if so, if you feel and truly perceive you're living your best life, great, don't change. I've got to a point in my own life where I've given up changing, wanting to change people. I'm here to support people. I'm a journey mate for people, and I do that at a very deep level. People need to want to be here as well, right?
Exactly.
I wanted people to do so much for me. I wanted my dad to be this. I wanted my mum to do that and be that. I wanted my therapist to take this away. I wanted my friends to be different. So wanting from others, but I wasn't really assuming responsibility for myself. And so we are relational beings and we are deeply interconnected. And we need to be here for each other because that's really important. And we have to assume some fucking self-responsibility and ownership of who we are in the world. Otherwise, the negative or bad or dense or unsustainable habits, they won't change and they won't shift.
How difficult do you think it actually is for there to be interconnection and unconditional love of a fellow human, as opposed to the other person just trying to get something out of someone else?
I think in the world we live in, it's more difficult than it is easy. I think that's changing. I think that humanity, the collective consciousness is shifting. But I think we live in quite a hyper selfish society and culture that promotes that in both obvious and not so obvious ways. And there's a fear there that really underpins how we are in the world. You know, our socioeconomic models contribute to that. Our geopolitical systems and models contribute to that. The corporate model contributes to that. You know, familial values and ideologies that are permeated through sort of a trickle down, top down effect, you know, contribute to that. I think that's shifting though. I think there's a new earth coming, and I'm very grateful to be what I consider to be a contributor to that new earth.
And helping people hold themselves accountable, right?
Yeah, and by holding myself accountable, because I'm not quote unquote perfect in any capacity.
Well, no one is perfect, right? So, I mean, yeah.
Or are we? Are we perfectly imperfect or imperfectly perfect? Probably both.
Imperfectly perfect. I love that. I love that quote. But yeah, so this is what I've come to realize, that, you know, the people that wake up one day or just keep waking up and saying, I have everything. I have material goods. I have a beautiful wife or a great husband. I have my kids. I have my job. And it's the sense of not being happy.
Because we're not satisfied, we're not in gratitude, we're not activating the physiological and emotional amplitude of gratitude and appreciation and presence. And that's really important.
Yeah, so the science, I would say, behind that is investing in accountability and gratitude and appreciation and self-awareness, as opposed to constantly running after something, thinking that the next thing is just going to make us happier, and then we get that disappointment and we're just not happy. So the message today is gratitude.
Definitely.
Excellent. Stefanos, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I know we're so time sensitive, but thank you so much for coming tonight, and really appreciate and honor you for the time that you're sharing with us.
Thank you.
And nice to have a little bit of Greece from the US. It's like a triangle, you know, it's like Greece, Australia, and the US, where we got right there.
I love that.
So many blessings. Thank you so much again. And take care. Thank you.
Good. Thank you.
Bye.